Hello, this is Two Ladies Midwest Adventures. I'm Jenny, and I am going to be doing my favorite part in The Hobbit in Chapter 5, The Attack of Gollum. Deep down here by the dark water lived old Gollum, a small, slimy creature. I don't know where he came from, nor who or what he was. He was Gollum, as dark as darkness, except for two big round pale eyes and his thin face. He had a little boat, and he rowed about quite quickly on the lake, for lake it was, wide and deep, deadly and cold. He paddled it with large feet dangling over the side, but never a ripple did he make. Not he. He was looking out of his pale lamp-like eyes for blind fish, which he grabbed with his long fingers as quick as thinking. He liked meat, too. Goblin he thought good when he could get it, but he took care. They never found him out. He just throttled them from behind if they ever came down along anywhere near the edge of the water while he was prowling about. They very seldom did, for they had a feeling that something unpleasant was lurking down there, down at the very roots of the mountain, and had come on the lake when they were tunneling down long ago, and they found they could go no further, so their road ended in that direction, and there was no reason to go that way unless the great goblin sent them. Sometimes he took a fancy for fish from the lake, and sometimes neither goblin nor fish came back. Actually, Gollum lived on a slimy island of rock in the middle of the lake. He was watching Bilbo now from the distance, with his pale eyes like telescopes. Bilbo could not see him, but he was wondering a lot about Bilbo, for he could see that he was no goblin at all. Gollum got into his boat and shot off from the island, while Bilbo was sitting on the brink altogether, flummoxed at the end of his way and his wits. Suddenly up came Gollum and whispered and hissed, "Bless us, splash us, my precious. I guess it's a choice feast, at least. Tasty morsel. It'd make us, Gollum." And when he said Gollum, he made a horrible swallowing noise in his throat. That is how he got his name, though he always called himself my precious. The Hobbit jumped nearly out of his skin when the hiss came in his ears, and suddenly saw the pale eyes sticking out at him. "Who are you?" he said, thrusting his dagger in front of him. "What is he, my precious?" whispered Gollum, who always spoke to himself through never having anyone else to speak to. This is what he had come to find out, for he was really not very hungry at the moment, only curious. Otherwise, he would have grabbed first and whispered afterwards. "I am Mr. Bilbo Baggins. I have lost the dwarves and lost the wizard, and I don't know where I am, and I don't want to know. If only I can get away." "What he got in his hands," said Gollum, looking at the sword, which he did not quite like. A sword, a blade, which came out of Goldland, said Gollum, and became quite polite. "Perhaps he sits here and chats with it a bitsy, my precious. It liked riddles. Perhaps it does it?" He was anxious to appear friendly, at any rate, for the moment. And he found out more about the sword and the Hobbit. Whether he was quite alone, really. Whether he was good to eat. And whether Gollum was really hungry. It's getting a little suspicious here. Riddles were all he could think of, asking them, and sometimes guessing them, had been the only game he had ever played with other funny creatures sitting in their holes in long ago, before he had lost all his friends and was driven away alone and crept down into the dark under the mountains. "Very well," said Bilbo, who was anxious to agree until he found out more about the creatures, whether he was quite alone, whether he was fierce or hungry, whether he was a friend of the goblins. "You ask first," he said, because he had not had time to think of a riddle. "So," Gollum hissed, "what has roots as nobody sees, is taller than trees. Up it goes, and yet never grows." "Easy," said Bilbo. "Mountain, I suppose." "Does it guess easy? I must have a competition with us, my precious. If precious asks and it doesn't answer, we eats it, my precious. If it asks us and we doesn't answer, then we does what it wants, eh? We show it the way out, yes?" "All right," said Bilbo, not daring to disagree, and nearly burst his brain to think of riddles that he could save him from being eaten. 30 white horses on a red hill. First they champ, then they stop, then they stand still. That was all he could think of to ask. The idea of eating was rather on his mind. It was rather an old one, too, and Gollum knew the answer as well as you do. "Chestnuts," he hissed. Teeth, my precious. "But we has only 6. Then asked his second voice. Then he asked his second voice. Voices it cries, wingless flutters, toothless bites, mountainless mutters. Half a moment, cried Bilbo, who was still thinking uncomfortably about eating. Fortunately, he had once heard something rather like this before. Getting his wits back, he thought the answer, wind, of course, he said, and he was so pleased that he made up one on the spot. This puzzle has nasty underground creature, he thought. An eye in a blue face saw an eye in the green face. That eye is like to this eye, said the first eye. But in low place, not in high place. Said Gollum. He had been underground a long, long time and was forgetting this sort of thing. But just as Bilbo was beginning to hope the wretch would not be able to answer, Gollum brought up memories of ages and ages ago. Before then, he lived with his grandmother in a hole in a bank by the river. Yes, my precious, he said. Sun on daisies, it means, does it? It does. But these ordinary, above-ground, everyday sort of riddles were tiring for him. Also, they reminded him of days when he had been less lonely and sneaky, nasty, and that put him out of temper. That, what is more, they made him hungry. So this time he tried something a bit more difficult and more unpleasant. And that is my favorite part of chapter 5. So, stay blessed, make the world a better place, one person and one moment at a time. You can come in here, little bee. And like and subscribe so we can get to 1,000 subscribers so we can start beekeeping. Because our goal of the year is to get to 1,000 subscribers before the end. Which is not much time left. So, bye-bye. Precious!